Hello, welcome to the Minimalist CDC. My name's Chris, and today we're going to do a teardown on this knife, do some disassembly and maintenance. So, I have taken apart a button lock before, and it proved to be quite the pain in the butt because you have this spring-loaded mechanism right here that putting it back together kind of sucks. So, hang out with me. I'm going to go through this. I've never opened this knife up before, so I don't know really what I'm in for, but I'm going to get my tools ready. I'm going to get us a T8 and a T6, which are usually the bits we're going to need for taking apart most knives. And we're going to get to it. So, first things first, I see that we probably don't have a captured pivot because I see screws on both sides. That's already strike one against this knife. Not that I'm going to discount its properties as a knife or a tool, but I really like seeing a captured pivot on a knife. So, starting off with the T6, we're going to extract the pocket clip. Should be pretty easy. Yep, and then these are steel screws because I can tell because this is magnetic and they're wanting to pull them out. I'm going to do my best to leave them in their socket so that I don't have to deal with finding them later. All right, let's continue going. Do we still have T6s? Yes, we do. All right. Again, we are dealing with more of a budget knife. So I don't know why T6 screws are more budget friendly for manufacturers, but they seem to be. Maybe boring the slightly larger hole for a T8 or the hardware is more expensive for them. I do not know. But we're going to get those two out. And so right away, I see that the one that was up here versus the one that was down there are two different sizes. So at that point, I'm going to just take a mental note, and I'm not going to mix my screws up. I'm just going to put them up there and then take this apart. So we see the extensive milling they've done inside of this guy with the weight reduction effort. We also see some grime and schmutz that are chilling out in here. Like, let's see, take a look at that. Like, this is a brand new knife, and there's all that gunk in there. I'm kind of curious what that is and where it came from. So, where I'm at here, I have two options. There's a little screw here that's holding in this titanium bolster, but also this pivot is going to hold us in. And I'm sure that's T8. Let me just check. Yeah. So, I'm hoping, and this is a trick that I've learned from other knives, is if I just put enough pressure right here with my finger, then the screw on this side won't turn and I can get this one out. It really depends on how tight this is and how much Loctite they use. Oh man. Oh man. We may not be able to do that. Okay, so I have another T8 bit around here somewhere. Yeah. So this is another little Weehaw product. It's just a bunch of bits in a smaller one. So we're going to try this where instead of finger pressure, I'm going to use one screwdriver to hold it while the other screwdriver turns the screw. It's not always easy to do this, and as tight as it is, I'm kind of worried about stripping it. Okay, here we go. This is going to be successful for us, though. We're about to see a bunch of little parts fall out, huh? And so one thing I'm going to be very careful of is, like I said, that spring-loaded mechanism is going to cause us some problems. I'm going to save that with the screw it came with. So, yeah, okay. And now that that screw's out, maybe I can get this one out without much of it. It is not wanting to come out. Okay. Fair enough. We're going to approach from the other side because I am not interested in stripping that screw if I can all avoid it. If it just needs to stay there, then so be it. So we'll get these three screws out. And that's just turning. Great. The joys of working with budget knives. Like, sometimes it is frustrating. So So this one is in the barrel spacer right here, and is just turning circles. So I'm actually putting pressure on the barrel with my back finger right here to make the barrel not spin, and then I can get the screw out. But I am afraid these screws are all different sizes, so to make sure that I can find them later and know where they go, I'm just going to put them back in their corresponding holes and set it over here for later. Okay. Now, where do we go from here? All right. What is that? Okay. It's a weird looking T6, I think. So, okay. Yep, that's a T6. It just looked bizarre. Get that over there, and then see if I can pry this off. I hope it's not glued down or something weird. Alright, slowly coming off. This is the part you gotta be careful for. Once you release the pressure on that spring, you don't want it to fly across the room where you have to go hunt for it. Thankfully I don't. Does this really not come off? Maybe that's the gunk I was seeing on the other side. It's some sort of an epoxy. But if it is glued, why is there a screw? Mysteries of the universe, I suppose. Okay, moving on. All right, so I'm going to pull that, maybe? Just being careful because there's a blade and a spring involved in what I'm doing here. All right, I'm going to get the blade out. Set that over there. For what this is overly complicated. And there's our spring. So here's our mechanism. So basically you're pressing this into that spring to make the mechanism work. And we are left with these barrel spacers. I'll get this bearing out of there. Come on. It's stuck, but there it goes. Okay. So this is about as far as I'm going to end up disassembling this knife, but as you can see, it is pretty disassembled. I was really hoping to get the titanium bit off, but it's interesting how they've done that. I'm going to take a look at it from the other side here. So, yeah, now the pivot wants to come out. Oh, I was completely wrong. So, this does have a T8 in it, but look at that. It's D-shaped, so it is a capture pivot. So be aware of that. Like this thing, yeah, that is the reason why it's not going to turn on you, is because it is a D-shaped pivot. That's wild. There's going to be someone that strips that out, trying to work with it. All right, just for my own sanity, I'm going to take this screw out and see if this titanium bolster moves at all. Yeah, it does. It is not glued at all. I still end up with a schmutz on there, so don't know what that is. It's wild that they would glue one down but not glue the other. Anyway. So I'm going to put this back together because it doesn't need to be taken apart for what I'm doing and the maintenance we're about to perform. Okay. Alrighty then. So, you know what? Because I don't want to do it later, I am going to I'm pulling the screw for just a second because I want to clean this out. And it's going to be easier to get out or easier to clean when it's like this. So all I'm using is paper towels and isopropyl alcohol. And it's not too hard to get this guy clean. I feel like this is going to be a longer video than most disassembly videos because there's just a lot more parts. But honestly, if you don't even have a knife like this or a button lock, sometimes it's fun to just hang out and watch someone work and gain some knowledge. because we're learning together. Because you know for damn sure that I've not done this before. About if you're watching me right now, I just have past knowledge of how this has worked in the past. I'm gonna take one more shot at getting that other bolster off. Like it really isn't moving, but I want to just make sure there's no schmutz or gunk or some sort of thing that is causing it. No. Looking for evidence that it may be spot welded at some point. Like that's just wild to me that is secured on there. Okay. So this is the platform I'm going to build back on. So I'm going to put our D-shaped pivot in here. Why in the world this has a T8 hole, which would, in theory, tell you that this could turn when it absolutely can't. That it feels like that's an oversight. Like that is a design problem. All right, so a few things. I'm going to put a tiny amount of oil where the spring sits. I am also going to lubricate right here. So this is the part of, make sure I'm on camera. This is the part that actually goes into that hole when the plunge lock is depressed. So I want that to go in as easily as possible without causing any friction. Because out of the box, a lot of these it's called, lock stick or whatever. Like you have to work these in my opinion. Like I've never seen a plunge lock out of the box that works perfectly. So I'm just going to try to move that around in there. And that guy's going to hang out for a second. All right. Next, I'm going to use my paper towel, a little bit of alcohol, and I might get any grease off of this that came from the factory, because I'm going to put my own on there. And these are pretty cheap ball bearings. You can get aftermarket ball bearings that are a little bit better, but I can tell that these are fairly cheap. But again, trade-offs, right? The knife only costs like $75 brand new. Quality does not come cheap. All right, so here is our blade. Let me get this pivot out. I'm going to clean. So I'm going to clean the ring where the ball bearings go, just to make sure there's no grime from the factory in there. Then put a thin layer of lubrication and just work it around. And then, so we're going to get, I think I'm going to have to put the blade in the open position for this plunge lock to go back correctly, which is kind of odd, but when I was taking it apart, that's kind of the way that it had to be to get it out of there. And we'll put that guy in. Cool. So make sure our barrel spacers stay where we want them. And then this can be tricky, making sure that this mechanism works. Like, it is a bit of a pain in the butt because you have to get the tang of the blade kind of in the groove of the mechanism to hold it in place. So I'm going to try a different tactic where I put this in first. Oh man, so many little parts. All right, I'm going to depress the mechanism, and then I'm going to try to put the blade on. Sorry if this is obscured, but I don't have a lot of wiggle room to manipulate this. I might have to pull the pivot back and push the pivot through once the blade is in place. This is the trickiest part of these button locks, is getting the mechanism back the way it is designed to work. So I'm pulling the pivot back pushing the blade into the groove of the mechanism and then pushing the pivot back in. So I'm gonna try to explain that a little bit better. So right here is the button, there is the plunge. And so what I did is I pulled the pivot all the way back out, pushed the mechanism down, inserted the blade into this little groove right here. Well, I just knocked out a thing I'll go get in a second. And then pushed the pivot back in once it was in the groove. So I think that is the only way I can get that done in a reasonable manner. So, excuse me, I'll grab that barrel spacer. Thankfully, we didn't roll too far. Okay. Next, let's see where we want to go. We want to get this scale on. And so I'm going to just put a little bit of KPL in the bearing racer right here. And I've got to line up the hole with the mechanism, the stop pin, and the barrel spacers. Thankfully, that looks like it's going to be a pretty easy task. I'm going to try to close this blade and work with the blade closed. Because anytime you're working with this, it's just safer to have the blade in a closed position. Thankfully, that was easy. Next, I'm going to get this pivot screw in. And once the pivot screw is in, we are going to be so much safer with this not popping back open. And remember, we had this little pivot collar piece pop out. Make sure that goes back in. Get the screw on top of it. I will tune it in a minute, but right now the biggest thing is just make sure it stays together while I put the rest of it in place. So here we are. We have that screw to get in. I guess it really doesn't matter since it's epoxied down, right? But still want to make sure this is put back together the way it came apart. Okay. Next, this piece. And then I'm just going to hold it in place with one finger. The thing is, working with screws like these little steel screws with a magnetic tool is they will sometimes fly away on you because magnets. Interesting. Okay, so for the same reason that one was spinning before, it's spinning again, but I'll show you how to fix that here in a second. It could stay where it's at for the moment. Yep. All right, we're going to attempt to hold the barrel in place while I screw this in with just friction, and that worked. Next, get this one in place. Put the smaller screw in first. Fantastic. Home stretch, folks, home stretch. Get that in. And lastly, we'll put the pocket clip back on. Now, if I was going to tune this, I would not put the pocket clip back on because it's unnecessary for tuning it, because you may have to open it back up. But I am pretty sure that I got everything I wanted done with the lubrication piece, because that's all I was really doing. And then I'm going to get these screwed in. I'm going to kind of address a problem I've had in the unboxing where the screws, like this one, protrudes more than this one. So let's see if I can't, I don't want to strip it, but like I want to get it pushed in as much as possible. And yeah, again, with budget things, like you're dealing with different size screws and whatnot, like this one definitely protrudes more than the others. Anyway, let's see what we got. Very nice. Ooh. So it's not glassy yet. We will get there. But that is so much better. I got no wiggle or no blade play. it feels so much better now with a proper lubing of the pivot and the racers. I imagine if I spent the $15 to get the premium ball bearings for this. There's multiple places like eBay and other places you can find them, but just make sure you get the right ones for the knife you're working with. That would feel a lot better. And the lock is. Can you hear that? It's still got a little bit of grit to it, which will wear down over time as the two metal surfaces that interface with each other, slowly erode one another so that they are flush. But because this is, I gotta say, it's pretty good. I was I was happy with it out of the box, but this is so much better. Like it actually glides closed versus before it didn't even have very much of a drop shut. And yeah, so that was a disassembly and maintenance of this guy right here, the CJRB Pyrite. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Thanks for hanging out with me. Y'all have a great day. See you in the next one.